Okay, so this week we're going to continue our nutrition chat. And then what might happen naturally is we might kind of come to a little bit of a pause and move into the movement section, which is supposed to be this call, which is all about like movement and exercise. So without further ado, we're going to just kind of go and pick up where we left off. If I can find my presentation. Okay, so that's my movement one. To get the other one up. Okay, cool. This is the slide we got to, I believe. So when we were talking last week, a lot of us felt that it wasn't necessarily more knowledge that we needed, but more application of that knowledge. And usually when we want to improve an area of our nutrition, it's related, rather than about having more knowledge, it's related to the 3 Ps. So we touched on this last week. The 3 Ps are practical, physiological, and psychological. So all these things need to be pretty good to apply what we know. So we say you might have, I don't know, 80% of the knowledge that I have, or 70%. So if you applied all of that, you'd be doing pretty well. I might be able to give you the 20, 30% of bit more kind of nutrition science and stuff like that. But like ultimately, if you could apply 70 or 80% of the bulks of knowledge that you have, you'd probably be getting really towards a much better place. And what's holding us back from that, I have figured out, I think, is either practical, physiological, or psychological. So we'll go through each of those. The practical means stuff like you haven't got any decent food in the house. So you haven't prepared, you haven't got a good structural rhythm in your week to get shopping of the food that you need for that week. Or perhaps you're on the move and you're driving around all day and you have to just stop at a garage. And we all know that garages don't really sell real food. They sell kind of frankenfood or fake food. They don't really sell fresh food. So it's all very processed kind of stuff that's built for longevity, which tends to have things in it that our body is not really built to process. And then they fill us up because they're sitting in our stomach, but they're not really giving us nutrition and not nourishing us. And so practical areas, to someone that's on the road for quite a lot, for example, is, it needs to be very prepared. It needs to prepare, like do batch cooking if they're going to eat well. And so that comes back to sort of like a practical element. One thing that's part of practical as well, which is probably worth me putting into the presentation, is environmental. And what I mean by that is, like, say, for example, you're at home and you work in the kitchen near your fridge, like I do sometimes. You are surrounded by food that you may not really need and tend to pick at that. Whereas if you're going to work in an office and there's no real food around, you might actually be in a better nutritional place, just simply from the environment that you're in. Again, back to the driving example, if you do a lot of driving, I know Gary does probably, the environment is not conducive. So you have to have preparation time for to make sure you're actually going to eat well. So that's kind of what I mean by practical. Physiological, so why we might not be eating the best, might be around, so for example, if you don't sleep well, this creates a physiological state within your body that makes you crave sweet, salty, immediate kind of gratification type foods. I mean, I had a really bad night 2 nights ago where I woke up at 3, and which is quite unusual for me, but probably once a month or something happened, and I just couldn't get back to sleep, and I'd had like 4 or 5 hours sleep. And honestly, all I wanted to do all day was eat shit. Like, my blood sugar was all over the place. And this is a physiological issue that's going to mean that day I'm not going to eat very well. And if this is a perpetual issue for you, like, daily or twice a week or something like that, that's going to affect your physiology, which is going to affect your nutrition. There's nothing to do with like knowledge of nutrition. Your cravings will overcome you. And then you have to address something else that's physiological, i.e. sleep. You have to address like all the things that we covered in week 1. And these are lifelong things. These are things you'll get better at some phases of your life, and then worse if you focus on it less and focus on it more. And so understanding, that's where a bit of knowledge does come in, actually. Understanding that sleep affects your craving regulation, that's a bit of knowledge, isn't it? So then you think, oh, actually, I just need to sleep better so I don't crave so much. This craving is an issue for you. Other physiological things to understand are, like, for example, if you eat sort of high sugar foods, your blood sugar does rise, and then your insulin will be excreted in your body. And then if your blood sugar is really high, your insulin is excreted, your blood sugar goes down, and then your blood sugar actually goes low. It doesn't go back to normal. If it's a real big insulin spike, insulin is a very effective hormone, unless you're diabetic, of course, and it goes down, and then you actually have low blood sugar, and your body is like, give me sugar, and then you kind of in a roller coaster. And so that's a sort of very physiological issue why you might get cravings as well. And things like alcohol obviously can contribute to this. It's obviously a form of quite fast releasing sugar. It can affect your sleep. It can affect the next day. These are all physiological type of things. Obviously, some people have quite rare conditions, and some people have, like, in the menopausal phase, we tend to see some different nutrition kind of cravings happen as well. So those are all factors that, you know, you can't just apply the knowledge that you know. You sort of a little bit, there's other factors going on there. But equally, all these things can be addressed in some way, even if it won't eliminate the issue, it can make it better. And we just have to be cognizant of what we're doing and how we can help our kind of cravings. And these are all physiological issues. And then the other one, which affects some people more than others, is psychological. It's like, oh, I've eaten a cake, so I'm just going to give everything up. That's a psychological issue. Of course, just because you eat a cake doesn't mean over a week your nutrition is going to be bad. And that's, by the way, how you should see your nutrition, guys. You should see it over a 7-day period, because if you're looking to lose body fat, that's all that matters, is that you're in a calorific deficit. Well, not all that matters, but the most important thing, you're in a calorific deficit over a period of time. We'll take a week, just because a month's a bit long and a day's too short. A week's a good amount of time. And you have to look at the end of the week, what does your nutrition look like? Not at the end of the day, because one cake's not going to make you fat and one salad's not going to make you thin. It's about the compound effect of looking at these things week after week after week and continuing. So eating a cake and giving up the healthy eating is a psychological issue. It's not a physiological one, because ultimately it's like, oh, if I were just to see this over a week period and realize that actually I can still lose body fat if I make different decisions on different days, then it's not a big issue to eat cake. And so, you know, the other thing around psychology is kind of like, for example, checking your weight a lot, and then like realizing that you haven't lost weight, or you put a pound on or something because last time you weighed yourself, you had gone to the toilet and this time you hadn't, for example. And then we're in this psychological spin, and actually it's not really a very helpful thing, because weight is just, your body's made up of different things. If you're looking to lose body fat, your body's made up of muscle, bone, water, fat, essentially. And just because you lost a pound doesn't mean it's a pound of fat. And that's why we recommend getting on the InBody machine and actually seeing what's happening in your body properly, rather than just judging weight. And obviously there's other sort of psychological issues around food that we can have. But what I want to do now is I'm just going to stop sharing that and just say in the chat, or you can unmute if you prefer, like, what would you say, the biggest of those three that affects you in terms of like you eating well in your eyes? So is it practical issues, psychological issues or physiological issues. It could be all three, of course. But Emily says practical. Would you mind sharing about that, Emily?
Oh God, it's so embarrassing, Luke. I'll do my best because these are lovely people in this group, but it's quite embarrassing to talk about. So I'm a single mum and I work full time, and it's flipping hard I used to have a really great schedule where I booked the Asda slot and I'd order the shopping and I'd go and collect it, and it would all be healthy and it would be nutritious and it would be fantastic. And then Lewis and I have had so many conversations about this. He must be absolutely sick of me talking to him about it. But then I cooked these lovely, healthy, nutritious meals and my kids wouldn't eat it. And they'd just be asking me for junk. It was so frustrating. Then one of them went through a period of being vegan, which was, I thought, great, fantastic. All of these vegetables and healthy things that I'm buying, wonderful. This is superb. They'll start to eat those. No, had no impact at all. Just wanted all of the vegan junk food. So yeah, my practical issues don't just revolve around me. And I now feel like there's some psychological issues there as well, just from me ranting about this at you. But yeah, practical issues are definitely a big one for me, and I'm going to stop talking.
No, that's really great. And it's interesting, 100% of you who've replied on the chat say it's practical, it's going to be your main barrier, which is really interesting. So like for you, obviously I didn't mention family. Of course, that's a huge, for those of us that have children, it's a huge thing. Like finding meals that everyone will eat in our house, 5 of us, is impossible. Like me and Kim, my wife, will eat the same thing. My 18-year-old, very good in terms of she eats everything pretty much, but she doesn't eat fish. So we love fish, so she didn't have that. My younger two are a nightmare. The fussiest thing. So we end up having to cook at least 2 meals, sometimes 3, which is a lot of work. And you know, if you're all working and it's a huge issue and it requires so much energy, time and money to kind of get it right. So I get it. I'm totally like with you there. But at the same time, like we love food as a family. So it is really important to us. So I think we probably do. I mean, you know, sometimes I just wish we could just have like a really simple put in the oven meal. You know, but like, we don't actually want to eat like that. I mean, sometimes we do, right? But hardly ever, because we actually like, so I think what we've done is we've just accepted that it's going to take time, money, and energy to eat like what we want. And we've sort of had to, maybe we don't do certain other things that other families might do because we place emphasis on that and eating well. We always sit down at a table and it's important to us and things like that. But yeah, I do, on some days it's like, oh my God, what's for dinner? You know, that eternal question. Anyone like to share some different practical issues? Because you're all kind of on this practical thing.
Psychological, probably, for me.
Okay.
Yeah. Rather than practical.
Is that a kind of like failure thing, or?
Yeah, you know, I've got, like I said, I've got fantastic willpower when I put my mind to something. So doing the challenge, for example, to be honest, that's great. I can do that. Won't drink the alcohol, do everything I'm supposed to do, and I'll follow that. And then because I don't have accountability, I think after it, you know, it's done like that. I'll still have the good intentions, but then might have that glass of wine at home, then it becomes 2 glasses and it goes back down the slippery slope. So I am like this for years.
Thanks for sharing. Like the answer I'm going to give you in terms of advice, you may not like, but it's the truth as far as I'm concerned, having worked with people and I'm a life coach and all that kind of thing as well, is like what you have to do is you have to like we talked about with Caroline in the group, in school, you have to deeply, like really deeply recommit to yourself every single day, probably multiple times a day. Who do I want to be? What does that look like? And then do it. Like that is the answer, because no one can keep you accountable all the time.
And I understand that, Luke. And for me, I think the wake-up call was that in-body machine thing, because that freaked me out with 39% body fat and 13% visceral fat. It was more what's going on inside. I'm 51, I'll be 52 in May. I want to be healthy. And it's not about the weight, honest to God. It's about the health. It's my body. It's inside. I don't want to have a heart attack. I don't want, I want to be fit and healthy and well. So, like I said, the way the Chinese have the year of the dragon, I have the year of the health. This is it. It's got to be. It's enough. I just keep telling myself enough. So I hope, last year, like I said, I did the year of the exercise and that was great. But this year it has to be. It's just, can't keep making excuses or whatever. It's just,
No, it's absolutely got it. Yeah. And I think something you said before is you were going to book a monthly personal training session with Lewis or whoever it was. And that's a really good idea, because we do need that other person to help us celebrate our wins, celebrate our pride, and the other, we're very social beings. We just can't have him there all the time, every day. And that's where we have to be our own accountability partner. Do you know what I mean? It's good to have, a weekly group like this, or but nutrition happens 5 times a day, not once a week, not once a month. So you need to be there 5 times a day for yourself. And what I can only describe it as is you go deeper into you. You peel back the layers of the onion. Commitment is a never-ending hole that you can go deeper and deeper and deeper. And the deeper you commit to yourself, not for anyone else, it's like this higher version of ourselves. We have this sort of monkey mind, this kind of what we might call a reactive version of ourselves. And it's like, we have to embody the deeper version of ourselves, the higher self, who really wants, and who can, feel that habitual craving coming, or feel that desire to do something and not act on it. And that's hard, but the more you do it, the easier it gets, right? So that is the real answer. It all comes back to mindset, really. But you also have to give yourself a time to recommit. So giving yourself a time I use the morning. So probably not every day, but 8 days out of 10, I'll get up an hour before everyone else. Meditation, breathing, journaling, recommitting. This is what I want to be today. That's the way I do it. It's not for everyone, but and I know it's not easy, and I certainly don't be that person every day, all day. But that's the one methodology. Just recommitting. We've got another group that I run. It's we say, relight my fire, like Lulu, and take that. Every day you've got, because your fire goes out. The fire, your commitment, will extinguish daily. And it's annoying, but that's what happens. So you have to actively relight it. Thanks for sharing that, though. Anyone else got some of these different practical issues other than family and, say, driving maybe, or any other sort of practical issues that come up? No, similar stuff, yeah? Cool. So it is hard. You just have to really prioritize it. That's the only way I'm certainly not always successful at it, but that's the only way I kind of am successful, is when I make it really high priority. Right, I'll move on now. Okay. Yeah, so this is what we talked about last week, was this kind of reactive discipline. There are 3 types of disciplines as I see it. It's reactive discipline, so where we react in the moment and slowing that down. What Viktor Frankl says, between stimulus and response, there's a space, and that's where lies our human choice and our freedom and growth, is that space between stimulus and responding to it. I see a chocolate bar, I see a bottle of wine, I can react, as I always have, or I can stop. I can breathe, and I can respond as the person I want to be. And so that's called reactive discipline. The next discipline up is called structural discipline. Now, structural discipline is how you plan your week or your day rather than the moment. So it's setting things up for yourself for success. So if you haven't got any food in the house, it's going to be hard, good food, it's going to be hard to react to your hunger because there's only crap there, so that's what you're going to eat, right? Whereas if you have structural discipline in place, i.e. shopping and maybe preparing and Tupperware food and eating cooking once, eating twice. So you batch cook, always cook more than you need, and then you can have it for lunch the next day. That kind of thing. Structural discipline is really important because that will help your reactive self. So we have reactive discipline, structural discipline, and then the final one is called expansive discipline. And this is the highest level. Expansive discipline is like all about like recommitting to yourself. So it's like, who do you want to be? Who do you want to expand into being in the future? So having a recommitment discipline where you talk to yourself in the morning or whatever, that's called expansive discipline. That's the hardest one, the deepest one to cultivate, but the most powerful as well. Okay. So all right, let's do a little bit of knowledge. I will I'm going to test Simon as well. So you can use the chat because Simon, I did this for Simon, but you're back, are you? I did a bit, so okay. So you can use the chat or you can call out on the microphone. So who could tell me the difference between macronutrients and micronutrients? We'll give Simon, I taught Simon this last week, so we'll give everyone 30 seconds and then we'll go to you.
Go on, Simon.
All right, come on, tell us, Simon. No, we can't hear you. Oh, damn. You're not on mute, so it must be your microphone. I'll give him like 10 seconds and then someone else can take it.
Whoa, Ian.
Okay, cool. So Simon says fat, carbs, protein. What does that mean? What is that? Micronutrients, macronutrients? What? Anyone else can answer, by the way. Okay. This is to empower you just with some knowledge. If you know all this, then just pipe up, by the way, if you want to. All right, so macronutrient is fat, carbohydrate, and protein. What is the calorific difference between these three food groups? Because they're not all worth the same calorifically. Does anybody know the numbers? Fat, protein, carbohydrate. They are, Simon knows. He's got his hand up. What are the difference calorifically? Okay, so carbs produce 2 molecules of water when they break down. That is true. That means they create more body water, but that's nothing to do with calories. But good one. Should I put you out of your misery, guys? Because Simon hasn't got a mic, unfortunately. Okay, so carbohydrate and protein have 4 calories per gram. Okay. Fat has 9. Now, this doesn't mean you shouldn't eat fat just because it's more calorific. We need fat to be healthy. And dietary fat does not become body fat automatically. The reason you create body fat is because you store excess energy. That's all it is. Fat is excess energy, which is quite empowering, really. Oh, I've got loads of energy to use if you feel that way. I wish I hadn't said that, just because I just called everyone fat and I really didn't mean to. But what I'm trying to do is that your body, that's what it's doing. It's just a way of storing excess energy. And you can use that energy by going into a calorie deficit, essentially, so that your body has to use it. So that is like the basic science of fat loss. Not that all of you might be here to lose fat, but a lot of people do. So that's why I'm talking about it. So when we say that fat and carbohydrate is very demonized, but mainly that was because in the Western world, we have a very high carbohydrate diet, usually. So we might eat toast for breakfast, sandwiches for lunch, pasta for dinner, right? That is not a balanced diet. So what we're looking for really is to have a kind of equal split of those three. A little bit higher on the carbohydrate because fruit and vegetables are carbohydrates. Fruit and vegetables, very healthy things with lots of vitamins and minerals. And also, if you're exercising, which all of you are, I believe, yeah, nothing wrong with potatoes either. They've been demonized as well, but calorifically, they're no more calorific than protein. Fat, however, we need to be a little bit more sparing with it because it's very calorific. It doesn't mean we shouldn't eat it, because if you eat a no fat diet, there's actually lots of vitamins you can't absorb. Vitamin A, D, E, and K you can't absorb without fat being present in your diet. So you need to have all food groups in your diet. And the ratio, roughly, percentage-wise, is we're looking for 40, 30, 30, roughly within sort of 5%. So carbohydrates 40, the other two are 30, 30. Now, in terms of the amount or grams, that would be less fat in amount because it's so much more calorific. When we're talking about percentages, we're talking about calories. That's how we split our calories. Now, you might say, well, that's all very well, but how do I know? Well, there's only one way of knowing, and it's still not fully accurate, but it's a good idea, is to use a tracker. Use something like MyFitnessPal. There's loads of different ones out there. Just do it for like 2 weeks and just see what your macronutrient split actually is. See what your calorific intake actually is, if you want. You don't have to. But what that can do is it can educate your eye and brain to kind of look at a plate of food in the future and say, well, I think that's about that. And you just kind of get a sense of like, I mean, not necessarily exact calories, but like, I mean, here's a question for you. If you had a plate of food, could anyone describe a plate of food that would have like all food groups in it? Macronutrient food groups. Anyone describe that or write it in the chat? Like fat, protein, and carbohydrate. What would be
I would have salmon. So I'd have
a
fillet of salmon. I'd have my broccoli and carrots steamed, and then I'd have my little potatoes.
Perfect. Yeah. So what? So where are you getting your fat there? Do you think
that'll be in the salmon?
Yeah. Protein.
Salmon.
Yeah. And carbohydrate.
Definitely potatoes, and probably the carrots as well.
Yeah.
And then broccoli. I don't know if it has carbs in it, but.
Well, think about it. What other food group would broccoli be? Is it
you
fat?
mean in the vegetable? But it's steamed, so no.
Whether it's steamed or not, it's still got no fat in it.
No, I know. Yeah, sorry.
It's not really got any protein, might traces.
Yeah.
This is the thing about demonizing carbohydrate. I always challenge people who are like, "Oh, I'm not going to have carbs." And it's like, "What, you're not going to eat any vegetables then?"
Yeah, and I love my carbs. I wish my sister's great. She doesn't bother with them at all. She doesn't need them. But if I don't and I'm working out, I definitely notice a difference. I'm weaker, if you know what I mean. I get like...
Yeah, but there's nothing wrong with them. The fitness industry has demonized them. The nutrition industry is coming around now. But like, it's just about the macronutrient balance and the calorific load over a week. That's what matters. If you're not getting fats and proteins, that's an issue. But there's nothing wrong inherently with carbohydrate. This kind of like it's just because the Western diet usually has quite low protein, or not always, but like that can be the issue here. Let me just read Emily's. Why don't they include fiber anymore? Or fiber? Okay, so fiber is like associated with carbohydrate. Emily, it's like a non-digestible carbohydrate. It usually comes with the carbohydrate, the fiber. It's like a part of it, really, we could call it. It's molecularly a little bit different. But yeah, fiber tends to slow the release of the sugar. So obviously, the only problem with carbohydrates seems to spike your sugar, but like that depends on the type, right? Vegetables aren't going to. Things like white rice without the brown husk, which is fiber, can spike your sugar quite a lot, and then you can kind of get cravings. So that can be a problem, but it all depends. What about keto? Yeah, I'm not a fan. I think it's basically you're reducing your calories. That's what you're doing to lose weight, and you are basically denying your body a food group that I personally just think these are all just like faddy quick fixes that you don't really need. Yes, you can lose weight because you're focused. you're focused on, and then people talk about ketosis and like being in a higher plane of energy levels and stuff like that. But like, I think there's other ways to do that. There's other ways to get energy. Like, you're probably feeling incredible because you're not eating all the crap that you normally do. It's just yeah, I'm not much of a fan. Sourdough bread was, yeah, again, it's just the bread is not a major issue. You just got to think, well, where did it come from? Right, it comes usually from a grain. Okay, grains aren't a massive issue as far as I'm concerned. Some people are intolerant, some people are not. But what you do have to think is that grain's been like made into a powder. And when something's made into a powder, it goes into your system very quickly. So if you have white bread, for example, you have got a quick release sugar without any fiber. Whereas although the brown bread is still like got like fiber a bit crushed up, at least it's a bit of a slower release. That's the problem with some carbohydrates, it's very quick release. And then you can go high, and then it can affect your mood and it can affect your cravings. And then you might eat something a lot worse. Sourdough tends to be a lot lower sugar spike, and it's my bread of choice. Again, because it's like ultimately a processed food, you want to like watch the amount that you have, but I have it a couple of times a week, maybe not necessarily like 2 or 3 meals a day, which some people eat bread, like toast, sandwiches, and there are better, more nutritious food choices, but it's not the end of the world. Back to my original question. So what's micronutrients then? We know what macronutrients are now. What about carbohydrates, fat, and protein, which you want a balance of? What about micronutrients? Simon knows. Anyone like to take a stab? Yeah, exactly, Emily. Just vitamins and minerals. And so vitamins and minerals are found in meat, fish, vegetables, nuts, all these kind of unadulterated foods. They tend to be quashed out if you overcook stuff a little bit too much in certain vegetables, for example. Don't tend to find any vitamins and minerals in things you can buy in a garage, for example. Vitamins and minerals are very important to just keep you healthy, to keep your body working properly, which is important. We all want a good functioning body. So vitamins and minerals are basically micronutrients, and we want as much of that as we can get, right? We want as many vitamins and minerals as we can get. And we always say, eat the rainbow, try and get as many colors into your diet, because they usually represent different vitamin and mineral qualities in a very basic level. One thing we discussed last week with Simon's group was that in nature, there's only one thing that comes with fat and where fat and carbohydrate only come together in one product, in one thing in nature. It's a very unusual combination, fat and sugar. But most processed food, it's a very excitable food to our brain and body, the fat and sugar combination. So fat and sugar, so most food that you kind of feel very craving for, so crisps, because they're like very thinly sliced potatoes, so it kind of acts almost like a sugar, and then you've got the oil on it. That's an example. Any kind of pudding, chocolate, fat and sugar come together. So fat and quickly carbohydrate, or it's called a monosaccharide, like sugar, basically. Sugar and fat never come together in nature, apart from in one product. And that is what humans have constructed into many, many different products. That's very excitable for us. I wonder if anyone knows, apart from Simon, what's the only thing where you get these two? Avocado, no. You get, it's more of a fiber, slow release carbohydrate than a fast one, but that's a good shout because it does have lots of good fats in it. But the sugar in avocado is not really, it's called a trisaccharide. It's like a triple bonded sugar rather than a single. Anyone? I'll give you a clue. It's designed to grow things. Good. No, eggs actually grow themselves. They're not supposed to be eaten properly. Apart from humans eat them, don't they? Milk, there you go. Milk. So milk is the only time in nature where you see a quick release carbohydrate and fat together, and then it has protein as well. It actually has all food groups in it. and it's designed to grow young things, calves or whatever. And it's that, and if you think, and it's designed to be like moreish, like for the calf, it's like that's how nature's designed it. But what humans have done is figured out, or big business, no, just animal milk, Emily, pretty much. I think it's a good question actually, but yeah, no, it's not really quite the same, because basically it's just water and a ground nut or bean. It's not really a milk. It's kind of like just a word really, but it's like a liquid. But good shout. So yeah, humans, and particularly big corporations, have figured out that humans go nuts for this combination, go crazy for it, and thus they create loads and loads of products around that. And that's partly where we've gone wrong as a race, is kind of like eating a lot of our food in that format. And that's kind of what you kind of want to avoid, which I know is really annoying because it's all the really delicious stuff, but it's very excitable in quite an unnatural way for a human. But it doesn't come in nature, and nature's very wise. And that's kind of like one of the things I would say about nutrition is like, try and go to the original source of how things are made in nature. So the less tampering with we can do, the better in many ways. It's kind of like orange juice. Okay, that's delicious, or some sort of juice. But if you think about it, when would you have a proper big glass of orange juice, for example? Like, that's probably about 5 oranges. Like, when would you ever eat 5 oranges? You never would you? And actually, to Emily's point about fiber, the fiber's not in the juice, because it's still the pith, right? It's still in the orange because it's been extracted. And the fiber's designed to slow the release of sugar in some ways, as well as hold the fruit together, but it's very clever and it kind of slows things down. So eating an orange, great. Having an orange juice, and now I'm not saying it's the worst thing in the world, because there are micronutrients in it. It's got vitamins in it. But the sugar hit you're going to get from that is actually very high, because it's got nothing to slow it down, and the volume is very high as well. So we've got it. And again, there's some great things in juices, but we've just got to be a little bit careful about these things we've tampered with too much as humans, because then that's where things tend to go a bit wrong. Hello, black cat. We've got in the middle there. Emily's cat's come to say hello. Is there any questions on micro or macronutrients? No? Again, like, this is a big topic, right? Trying to do this in 2 sessions is pretty stupid. I do say so myself, but hopefully you're going to learn things and get some ideas. Yeah, we talked about calories, talked about carbs. Yeah, so we talked about tracking. Like, a great way of just managing your nutrition is just that if you don't want to use MyFitnessPal, just write everything down for a week. Just write down everything that passes your lips. Don't try and be good or bad, just observe. And then look back at it and think, okay, that's enlightening, usually. What can I tweak here? What can I change? So what gets measured gets managed. If you bumble along like without observation, it's probably not going to change. So definitely recommend. Just going through my slides here. I think we've actually talked about quite a lot of what I wanted to talk about. Yeah, so the other thing is just that, we talk about reconnecting with yourself and who you want to be that day. It's like, just think about what your priorities, reconnect with your why. Do you want better energy? Do you want lower body fat? Do you want more clarity? Do you want better mood? Do you want better, all these things, good nutrition is going to contribute to. So just reconnecting with that why all the time, to make your choices when you're shopping and when you're reacting. Reactive discipline we have to have in place, structural discipline and expansive discipline. That's like why, where do I really want to be? All of these things have to be running to eat. And then really when you're doing that, it just comes back to, a bit more knowledge, which is like someone like I can give you. But if you could employ everything you'd be probably doing really, really well. I can't believe it's 1 o'clock already. Is there any questions so far? obviously you can catch me in the gym or drop me an email if you think of something. I'm really happy to answer questions. I hope you learned some things today. I hope you took away some little. So it's down to you. You know, you think, what am I going to do now? It's not. I'm just the presenter. You're the actioner. And have a good rest of your day. And we shall see you next week for talks about movement.
Cool.
See you in the gym. Take care, guys.
See you tonight. Bye.
Bye. Bye.